This is the fifth of 6 ethics training modules for Texas educators. Module 5 will focus on confronting and reporting borderline behaviors. The purpose of today's module is to explore the responsibility of educators in identifying and reporting inappropriate behaviors. As we prepare to begin this training session, this is the overarching essential question that we will conceptualize today. What is my role in reporting inappropriate behavior? Let's take a moment to review the session objectives. Today, we will identify lack of judgment decisions, identify responsibilities for reporting educator misconduct, and review and discuss district reporting policies that ensure a safe and ethical climate. Before getting started, I'd like to let you know that I do understand how difficult it is to do what we are going to ask of you, which is to report suspected inappropriate educator-student relationships. For some, it may not be difficult, but for others, it may not feel comfortable reporting something that may be considered to be an ethical violation. The majority of educators are committed and caring professionals who want only the best for their students. However, it is important to remember that educator misconduct is a reality and can devastate students, parents, school districts, and entire communities. Acknowledging that 1, there is a problem, 2, educators need training about these issues, and 3, everyone must follow state and local policies, can go a long way towards stopping this type of behavior while still allowing staff to engage in appropriate teacher-student relationships. The faces of educators who have been arrested for having inappropriate educator-student relationships stare back at us from the pages of newspapers and television news stories much too often. It might be a teacher, paraprofessional, principal, or any other adult in the school. The students who have forever been scarred from these experiences will never be the same. The photos you will see next are just a sampling of some of the Texas educators who have been arrested for crossing serious, inappropriate relationship boundaries with their students. In Texas, the number of reports of inappropriate teacher-student relationships has increased dramatically, according to the Texas Education Agency. We will review and discuss reasons why the number of cases is increasing. In order to be part of the solution in decreasing incidents of educator misconduct, it is important to understand the meaning of borderline behavior. Before we discuss borderline behavior more in depth, let's watch a video that illustrates the importance of the reporting responsibility in preventing the escalation of educator misconduct.
Educator ethics violations are increasing each year in our public schools at alarming rates. This video will focus on the responsibility of all educators to confront and report the behavior. What is your responsibility to confront or report a possible violation? While it may be difficult to report the inappropriate actions of a fellow educator, it is necessary to protect the safety of all our students.
Mr. Meyer, you're always on that phone. What are you doing?
I'm just checking my Facebook. Always an interesting read.
Who has time for Facebook?
Yeah, I like it. It's a good way to stay in touch and chronicle my life. Kind of like a digital scrapbook.
Chronicling your life, huh? You know as a teacher that'll get you into trouble. Seen it happen before.
So, Ms. Gonzalez, you on Facebook?
Yes, but I don't have a lot of time to spend on Facebook or anything else.
Well, you're way out of touch. What you need is Snapchat. There's also Instagram, Tumblr, 4chan, and Kik. I'm sending you, Ms. Gonzalez, a friend request right now. See you online, doll.
You have a great day. Oh my goodness, Mr. Meyer really did send me a friend request. Wow. This is totally inappropriate. I can't believe he's actually friends with students and they're leaving comments on his pictures. And what is he smoking in that photo? I'm gonna have to report this. Thank you for bringing this to my attention. Mr. Meyer, please, sit down. I'd like to talk to you about social media. How do you use social media for your instructional needs?
Well, I don't really use social media for my instructional lessons. I will send the occasional text reminder for a missing assignment, but that's the extent of it.
What about Facebook? Do you connect with students on Facebook?
Well, no, yeah, sure. I like to friend them and let them know I care. I really want to build those personal relationships and connections so they'll trust me and want to learn in my class.
Mr. Meyer, are you aware of our district policy on social media?
No. I mean, I really haven't done anything wrong. What is the policy?
It is in the staffed handbook that you received in the beginning of the school year. It provides guidance on expectations for social media utilization. Mr. Meyer, several pictures on your Facebook account show you drinking, vomiting, smoking, as well as several other inappropriate posts. You are also communicating with several of the female students in a way that is definitely blurring the lines between what is okay and what is not okay.
Well, yeah, but that's my personal life. I don't say that was any of your business. I mean, I say that respectfully. Aren't I supposed to have a personal life?
Mr. Meyer, you don't stop being a teacher at 4 p.m. Students look up to teachers and consider them role models and mentors. Your behavior shown in these Facebook pictures does not reflect the behavior of a positive role model or mentor.
I just don't understand. It's my personal life.
The manner in which you are communicating and the frequency of your communications is a direct violation of our district policy and the Texas Educators Code of Ethics. There are serious consequences that arise from the type of behavior that you've demonstrated on the social media platform.
So even Snapchat, where the posts are temporary?
Mr. Meyer, nothing is only temporary. The images you send on Snapchat are not only briefly stored on the servers at Snapchat, they're often stored on your phone's temporary files. That means that anyone can come grab your photos even if you thought they were gone forever. Furthermore, sir, I'm very concerned with your inability to understand what is expected of you. No contact with students on social media whatsoever. Am I being clear enough?
Instagram?
You're still having difficulty understanding my verbal directive. You will receive within 24 hours a formal reprimand documenting this conference. You need to understand that possible termination will occur should you decide to go against my directive and continue to have social media contact or any other inappropriate contact with any current or former students. An outcome of this investigation will be forthcoming. Thank you, Mr. Meyer. Have a good day.
Reporting a colleague is difficult, but it is a critical responsibility to report inappropriate teacher-student boundary violations. Placing student safety above all else must be our main priority. Confronting and reporting all violations is vital to ensure student safety and your job security.
I felt like it wasn't my place to report my colleague, but in hindsight, I could have possibly changed what happened. A kid was hurt, and that is something I'll have to live with for the rest of my life.
He was my friend, and I suspected something was happening, but I didn't want to confront it. I wanted it to be just a rumor. He has ruined his life and possibly the life of a student.
I know that other teachers knew what was going on. They all protected each other. I needed someone to step in and help me. I felt alone and horrible. I didn't know how to stop it before it got out of hand. I thought teachers were supposed to take care of us.
In the video segment, the teacher who included several of his students as friends on his Facebook page is definitely on a slippery slope. How would you have addressed this issue if you were the colleague who discovered the inappropriate online communications? How prevalent is the practice of including students as friends on personal social media accounts among educators? The education profession is extremely complex and critically important within our society. We need to ensure that the professional practice of teaching meets the highest level of educator standards and expectations. Being aware of behavior or situations that can negatively impact our profession will help us ensure a safe learning environment for our students. As adult bystanders, we contribute to an unsafe school environment by remaining silent. Unfortunately, most educators don't know the warning signs and patterns of educator misconduct that may exist. Thus, many refrain from reporting suspected educator misconduct. In an earlier training module, you learned about boundary violations. This section will provide information that will help bring awareness to a pattern of borderline behavior. Knowing this information will help educators be better prepared to report inappropriate behavior to their administrators. The behavioral pattern that has been identified in cases of inappropriate teacher-student relationships is typically referred to as the lack of judgment or slippery slope pattern type. Although the terms may differ depending on the body of work, the similarities in the pattern type are closely aligned. Most adults don't initially intend to target students to harm them, but the educator-student relationship that develops meets an emotional need. For example, companionship, loneliness, depression, etc. This is a point where some educators can find themselves on a very slippery slope. Before they know it, they have crossed the line into an inappropriate relationship with a student. The action of the educator begins to look questionable to other colleagues or students. Examples: always talking to the same student, or checking in on him or her, sitting next to him or her in the lunchroom rather than eating with colleagues, allowing the student to get away with unacceptable behavior when in class. Educators whose actions have led them down this slippery slope are often astounded that they put themselves in such a precarious situation. This is a statement from a teacher who was investigated for having an inappropriate relationship with one of his students. It emphasizes how the slippery slope effect begins. It also demonstrates how this educator found himself in a situation that jeopardized the student's well-being and the teacher's career. Let's review and discuss a scenario that demonstrates how the decisions made by a teacher changed her life forever. I typically remain in my classroom until 5:30 or 6 most afternoons to grade papers, gather lesson resources, etc. Walking to my car, I frequently observed a teacher leaning against her car, engaged in conversation with one of my 8th grade students. I often left feeling uneasy. It didn't appear appropriate for this teacher to be chatting with the student in this manner. Their proximity seemed flirtatious. Usually, there were only 2 cars left in the parking lot, mine and hers. 2 months later, the teacher was suspended for having an inappropriate relationship with the student. Ultimately, she lost her job and the student transferred to another school. I should have reported what I had observed to my principal. Now it's too late. In this case, the teacher used lack of judgment. She and the student often spent time engaged in private conversation. This type of borderline behavior placed the teacher on a very slippery slope. A colleague often observed that inappropriate behavior of this teacher, but failed to report it to the principal. After the teacher lost her job for having an inappropriate relationship with the student, the colleague realized that she should have reported the suspected misconduct and possibly prevented the escalation of the situation. What would you do if you were the person who witnessed this situation? Would you report this incident to your principal? Educators in these situations don't intend to become involved with their students, but unfortunately they let it happen. They are often left to face the consequences of their misconduct. The outcome of this situation helped administrators intervene. The reporting process is an important responsibility for everyone who is charged with the important task of keeping our students safe. There's no question that the number of inappropriate teacher-student relationships is increasing in Texas. This slide shows the number and types of educator investigations that have occurred to date. Are the numbers of cases rising because of increased educator violations or because of an increased willingness of people to report what they know? What do you think? We hope the reason is because more people are reporting incidents to campus administrators, child protective services, or law enforcement as applicable depending on each case. Now that we have a greater understanding of the urgency of this situation, we need to take some time to discuss professional responsibilities to address this grave concern. As a profession, it's critical for educators to understand their professional responsibility to report suspected misconduct. It's really quite simple. We are responsible for the well-being and safety of the students in our schools. As a profession, we must protect them by ensuring that state and local policies and procedures on reporting educator misconduct are strengthened. Carol Shakeshaft is an educational researcher noted for her studies on sexual abuse of students by school personnel. She states that this quote is a common explanation that is given for not reporting a colleague's questionable behavior. If I reported and I was wrong, I would have ruined the life of another teacher. Now let's look at it from a different perspective. Unfortunately, Shakeshaft states that this is not an explanation that is given by school personnel when it's discovered that one of the students at their school was harmed because of educator misconduct. We must make huge strides to ensure that we protect our students by becoming better at understanding the warning signs so that reporting will become more prevalent. So how do I distinguish between what is and isn't a reportable offense? As you can see, educators experience an internal struggle when it comes to reporting a colleague for suspected educator misconduct. One of our most important fundamental responsibilities as educators is to ensure the safety and well-being of our students. Ask yourself the following questions. Is the student in danger of being harmed in any way? Is the action or behavior exhibited by my colleague appropriate? There are several reasons educators give for not reporting suspected educator misconduct. Lack of recognition of characteristics associated with inappropriate or abusive behavior. Lack of awareness of legal responsibilities. Or fear of negatively affecting the school or educator's job. These findings underscore the importance of providing training for all school personnel in knowing what the responsibilities and warning signs are that point to inappropriate educator-student relationships. Reasons some educators give for not reporting suspected educator misconduct. Lack of sufficient evidence. Belief that the student will be harmed more than helped if reported. Fear of retaliation or litigation. Educators should never be apprehensive about reporting educator misconduct. Doing what's right for all students should remain the focus of our responsibilities. If you suspect or know something, report it. As tragic incidents are reported across our nation on a daily basis, law enforcement agencies and other concerned organizations are making the same request. If you see something, say something. Homeland Security states that if we see something that we know shouldn't be happening, or we believe someone's behavior doesn't seem quite right, we should say something. Informed, alert communities play a critical role in keeping our nation safe. So what do we need to know about the reporting process? There are a few important components of the reporting process that we need to review before we complete the training module. Reporting what we know if we suspect educator misconduct is a priority. Following the district's reporting protocol is imperative. Your campus or department administrator should be your first point of contact in reporting educator misconduct. He or she will be able to act quickly in addressing the concern. Don't wait or mull things over or attempt to determine for yourself whether the behavior you have observed has a plausible, innocent explanation. You may not understand the entire situation, and allowing the conduct to continue could be detrimental. Always maintain confidentiality. Students have the right to expect to have their physical, emotional, academic, and social well-being protected at school by all the adults who work at the school district. These are additional steps that are important to ensure that a safe and ethical climate is supported. Provide awareness training. Follow through when confronted with questionable educator behavior. Strengthen policy guidance in identifying, reporting, and investigating incidents if applicable. Enforce a zero-tolerance policy regarding professional misconduct. Are there reporting requirements for superintendents? The answer is yes. Within 7 calendar days, a superintendent must report educator misconduct that results in termination or resignation, and a reported criminal history of an applicant for or holder of a certificate or permit issued by SBEC. Now let's make some final connections to sum up what we've learned. Today, we have been able to identify several outcomes in confronting borderline behavior and strengthening the reporting process. With the knowledge that all school personnel have a better understanding about questionable educator behavior and responsibilities for reporting suspected misconduct, the campus will be able to be more vigilant in ensuring an ethical climate, thus eliminating inappropriate incidents. It will also provide students with a strong message that will allow them to trust that the adults at their school will protect them from harm. Finally, trust your instincts. If something seems amiss, it frequently is. Each participant is required to complete an assessment based on the information received in this training module. You must receive a score of 100 to receive credit for this module training. This concludes Module 5 of the Texas Educator Ethics Training.